Hello, everybody. Good morning to you here from California. My name is Dr. Stephen Gilligan. I am a psychologist who is the head of something called International Association for Generative Change. It's an international community that is devoted to how to create lasting and sustainable change for everybody. I'm really delighted to introduce Kathleen Dameron, who is a senior member of the IAGC. She's talking to us from Paris. Good evening in Paris, Kathleen.
Good evening.
And Kathleen's got about as many hats as I could imagine, and I'm not talking about physical hats. She's got so many different identities. She's, as I say, she's a senior member of this community, done a lot of training with me in California, in France. She is also African-American. She's involved in a lot of social justice and political groups. She has also had meditation practice and is part of meditation communities, both Gurdjieff communities, and I don't know what you would call that, the African-American Buddhist groups that you're a part of.
Radical Dharma.
Radical Dharma. So she's got, a connection to so many different things, and we're going through so much right now. And, the two characters, the Chinese characters for crisis is danger and opportunity. And I think more than ever, what we're facing, not only in this present crisis, but in so many different areas, that the single voice of the white Western male is being ferociously challenged, rightfully, to create a circle, a table where everybody's voice is equally heard and listened to. So, yeah.
I'd like to slip in right there. Because when you say that the white Western man's voice is being ferociously challenged, it's really very interesting, because if you take it from an African-American point of view, we use terms like white guilt and white fragility.
Yeah. You
have to really be careful when you challenge white men, because they take the slightest thing as ferocious. And so it's sort of like, a lot of what you hear today is people saying white men can carry machine guns with arms, they can go to the State House, they can stand 2 inches from a white policeman's face and shout at him insults, and the guy is just peaceful, doesn't move. Okay. And you get a peaceful demonstration with Black women and children. And I will insist on the children, because people brought children who were 9 years old to the demonstration. And that is perceived as it's ferocious. And so they shoot tear gas and they shoot rubber bullets. So the minute you say ferocious, and I can understand your intention is about there's a challenge. But when you say ferocious, we always feel like, damn, we walk out the house and it's already perceived as ferocious.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I hear you.
I mean, and in these past couple of weeks, when you would see the white guys with the machine guns running around, Black and brown people, we always say, shit, if that was us, we'd be dead. There'd be dead bodies. And we probably shouldn't have said that, because peaceful demonstration, and they start shooting. And it's like, yeah, we are so quickly perceived as aggressive, ferocious, angry. I'm scared. And how can you be scared when we're the ones who die?
Yeah.
But the defense is always, I was scared. So, and I know I jumped in there, but just that word ferocious in my neighborhood and community is a real trigger word. Like, no, like, damn, We just walked out the house with our 9-year-old children and went to a demonstration. They shot at us. And by the way, a grown policeman took a can of mace and sprayed it in a 9-year-old's face. So that perception of ferocious is there. And on our side, it's like, no matter what we do, no matter how little we do, no matter how little we say, just the fact that we're taking up space and breathing is ferocious.
Yeah.
And take a deep breath and let your shoulders drop. We're gonna do this. We're gonna have a generative conversation. So you have to. I know these guys who do generative stuff, and they say when you're looking at the other person and their body is tense, it's not going through. So you want to make sure that when you look at them, you can see that the shoulders drop and they look relaxed, and that there's a fluidity. You know those guys?
I believe we have a name for that in the generative change world.
Okay. See, I'm sure everybody looking at this video, they can see how your body just changed.
Well, you know, for what it's worth, the image that I was holding with that, and I also get what you're saying, and I feel that in me. But I was actually consciously having this image of all the protesters outside the White House. And of all the different images, that was one that heartened me the most, you know, and this sort of challenge. And then, you know, when Trump, after he was, you know, it was discovered he had the lights out in the White House and he was hiding in the bunker, you know, he came back out and, you know, did that violence, you know, to everybody to mow him down, so that there was a group of, and I think it was obvious, starkly obvious, of all white men and his daughter that stormed across in front of the church. So, you know, it seems, Kathleen, that this experience that Black people have had for all their lives, it's starting to come more into the awareness of other people around. And I don't know if you were heartened by the fact that the demonstrations were filled with a lot of different types of people.
What heartened me this time was not that it was filled with different kinds of people. What heartened me, for example, was in Louisville, when those white women said, we will put our white bodies, we put our white female bodies between the Black demonstrators and the police. Because what happened is the police stopped charging. And I love it. One of the women said, we're going to use our white privilege to protect them. Mm-hmm. And by the way, in Kentucky, there was this Black woman who was killed in her bed. And to this day, none of the policemen who came into her house and shot 8 bullets in her body and her bed have been charged with anything. And so there's a lot of anger and frustration in Kentucky. And what's heartening is that you have white people who say, not only we do understand, not only come with you, but we recognize that we have a privilege, but we're going to use it for you. And that heartens me. That makes me feel like they got it. I'd also like to come back to something, because we talked a week ago, and if you take what's happening from a Black perspective right now, the key thing is not Floyd. The key thing is that we've been going through something tremendous for weeks, which is most of the people who are dying from COVID are Black and brown bodies. And you get Chicago, which has a black mayor, and she makes a statement. Most of the people, over 70% of the people who are dying in Chicago are black because of systemic racism. Okay? And then you start to get these white militiamen with their machine guns, and they can go into a state house in session, and everybody's going, damn, you know, we have a peaceful demonstration, and they shoot us, and they let these people get in their face, and they let them shout at them. I mean, talk about white privilege. We can't do that. And then you get Ahmed, it comes out because it went viral that he'd been jogging and chased and shot down, and that city there did nothing.
People don't know, particularly outside the US, this was a black man in Florida who was just out jogging, and he
was in Georgia.
Sorry, Georgia, yeah.
He was jogging, okay? But you would be surprised, because when we had the demonstrations in Paris and in London, people knew about Ahmed, and they know about Breonna, and they know about George Floyd. So it's coming out. But we get this build up, you know, had Ahmed, and people are saying, what did it take? It took from February till May for them to actually arrest somebody. And then all of a sudden, and so you got this buildup, which is hard. And then this guy is killed, and you got 8 minutes of video. You got people talking to the policeman. And he's just got his hand in his pocket, and the other one is saying, the crowd is getting agitated, we need some backups. And that was Monday. And then, Minnesota does something extraordinary. They fire the 4 policemen. That's extraordinary. Normally, they get paid vacation. And people say, but is that it? Wednesday, I started vomiting. I vomited Wednesday violently, and I never vomit. I vomited Wednesday afternoon. I was so nauseous. I said, what did I eat? What is going on? So I get up Thursday, and I'm still really nauseous. There's a Senegalese woman standing in my house right now. She says, I'm nauseous too. I don't know what's going on. And slowly, all Black people I know, whether they were Buddhists, whether they were meditators, whether they were Christians, people say, I'm nauseous, I got a headache, I just feel really bad. I went to we called a vigil, healing process for the Black Spiritual Committee. There were 600 Black meditators and spiritual teachers who came, 600 online. Almost everybody, I'm nauseous. I feel like I've been beat across all my body. T.D. Jakes is this huge, big African-American Protestant. He said, I have been crying for days. And so all of a sudden I realized that that whole accumulation hit so many spiritually connected people in our community that we were physically ill. Physically. It wasn't an individual thing, it was a community thing. And it was, I live in France and I felt it, and people in the States felt it, you know. And so all of a sudden we've got something in our community, which is, you could say, the body, the spirit, this is too much. It's too much. And so how are we gonna be able to hold the field? Because if the people who are deep into spiritual practices, from the Buddhist to the Christian, are having trouble holding it, what are the other people doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you know, this is in the generative change work. It's always the first principle. How do you open and hold a field? And what invitations or what suggestions do you have for our community, this in terms of how do we open a field to bear witness, to support, to let all these things that have been for the larger community locked in the basement or kept in the shadows, how do we hold a field to.
How Holyfield? I have an idea, because one of the things is that the white community, you have learned to totally disconnect, to dissociate from your humanity. If it's a brown body or a black body, your humanity, your compassion gets turned off. So for example, imagine everybody saw that video of those 8 minutes with the knee on the neck. And when the city announces we're going to fire the 4 policemen, in the white world, that's okay. It's acceptable. We saw how the black man died. We heard another black man say, "I can't breathe and die." And the punishment, the justice for that is those 4 black policemen will be fired. That's okay. And not only that, we did a good job this time. So can you just close your eyes and feel how far that white community has dissociated itself from what they saw as a cruel way for someone to die, but it's a brown body, so that's okay. So you see how far the conditioning has gone, that you're able to say that was bad, but then there's a disconnect.
Can I share with you what I notice as my response when you invite me to do that? That, you know, I've been having these amazing conversations with my 28-year-old daughter, who you know because you kindly hosted her in your Paris apartment. But she's like going through this sort of awakening. And she says, you know, Dad, it's just like the more I hear about Black history, the more it's just almost, it is unbearable how painful it is. And then I have to shut down, and then I feel guilty because I want to be compassionate. But I noticed, you know, as you were making that invitation to really feel that in my heart, I did. And it got to be quickly so painful that I heard this other conditioned voice saying, yes, but, or, and running away from it. And I think that's one of the things that we all, particularly in the white community, we really need to see that and sense that and do the work with that, the automatic dissociation from bearing witness, and to realize that this is part of our communities, this is part of our core consciousness. And I'm curious, you know, I just wanted to share that with you. And I know it's something that I'm struggling with. And
you know, when you do trauma work, when something is traumatic,
yeah.
you don't want to see it. You want to ignore it. You want to dissociate from it. And my invitation, and I've been thinking about it, is that I'd really like to try with the generative coaching community and with our great NLP, Robert Dilts. You know, if you can have a swish for people to get rid of their phobia, you know, can we do a swish to help people be able to see it and not dissociate?
Well, I don't know if Robert quite endorses that method anymore.
But you know what, I'm taking it my way.
I totally get that.
Because, I mean, our community has tools to help people deal with trauma. We have tools to help people dissociate. And all of a sudden, what I felt so strongly, because to put it on the table, I was so upset and physically nauseous, and then I went to all these healing things with Black people, and then I had a conversation with a dear, dear white friend, and she said, oh, but isn't it great because Black people are out and they're demonstrating and you see that? And I blew up with her and said, but we're tired of dying. I'm fucking tired of seeing Black bodies die. I have seen Black bodies in the street with blood since I was 8 years old. When I was 8 years old, I had to be strong and go to school, in a school where they didn't want me, and where adult people who are Christian and good parents can go and throw stones at little Black children because they're Black, because they don't want us in their school system. And this little Black child was calm, cool, you know, focused. I'm here to go to school. I don't care what they're yelling and they're shouting and screaming, and we go to school. 8 years old. I am tired, sick and tired of that. And so great, we're out there demonstrating again. We're gonna die again. No, fed up, done. And she was really surprised. And she said, Kathleen, I don't think you're centered. And I said, I'm fucking centered. It's not the center you like to see. Yeah. And so, that's the other thing, and this is in the Black spiritual community. So many people say there's a time to be quiet and to meditate, and there's a time where you scream, you shout, you jump up, you move around, you whirl and you twirl, but it is not the moment for us to go, no. That is not the centered for our people in this moment. Yeah. And Monday morning, I woke up at 4 o'clock and I said, I'm gonna write all the white people I know who have an open heart. Because racism is not about being, I don't like Black people. It's systemic, it's conditioned. And I wrote and I sent documents and videos and I said, this is not gonna change by anything in my power. I'm helpless, like I can't change the weather. However, you as white people in this generative coaching community, you have the power and you have the tools to work with white people to switch. And it's not about being nice. It's not about saying, I like you. It's about saying that I recognize that I have been conditioned, that we as white Westerners have been conditioned since the 1600s, that the justification for slavery, the justification for killing Native Americans to take their land was because they were brown, or they were red, or because they were savage, or because they didn't have the same soul. That justification for taking their life and their property is inherent in how you get your history. It's inherent in your stories. That's a deep conditioning. Drop your shoulders. Because it's a deep conditioning for you to change. Come on, shake it off.
So, you know, one of the things we always talk about in terms of like these intense sessions or, you know, residential workshops is people get this big opening and then they think, okay, we're done with that. And now let's go back home and nothing really changes. And I was just thinking that, you know, in some ways like these big cathartic demonstrations or, you know, this one to me is the biggest since, you know, we were teenagers in the 60s. It seems like it would be so easy to get on board, like, yeah, this is important, but as soon as the TV screens shift to something else, we go back to business as usual.
And
for a lot of people.
But going back to business as usual is normal. I mean, that's what the human mind does.
What I'm saying is, you know,
but that's why
suggestions you have about, so how do we use this experience to say we can't turn away, we've got to do, you know, I don't know if you say start with feeling it all and welcoming it all within ourselves, and then making sure our actions in the community create some place for all these different parts to be accepted. But it seems like we need also a commitment to some sort of long-term vision.
But I think, and there's a commitment to a long-term vision, but there's a commitment to the practice.
And which practice?
I don't know. I said, trying to figure out who said this, but that the last step in the process of generative change is, what are you going to practice?
That would be Stephen Gilligan and Robert Tilts. But so that's really the question I'm asking.
So for me, the question is, how are you going to commit to say, this isn't going to be done in a one weekend? It's probably not even going to be done in a year. But the fundamental thing to change for me is that white people to accept that everything about how you have constructed your culture and your society since 1600s is that we, given the color of our skin, have a right to all the land whenever we want it, all the money whenever we want it, and that our lives matter unimportant. And when, as I like to say, coming away from the African-American experience, because Native Americans get killed more than African-Americans, is that you took the land, then you pushed them to another piece of land, and on the barren piece of land that they have, when you want to put a pipeline through, you go in the winter and you pour water on their elders so they will freeze to death. And that, oh, but it's okay. There's a quick dissociation. And it always comes down to property. In the African-American community, people are ready to hit when you say they're looting. And you go, okay, so Black man is killed, Black woman is killed. Police are in total impunity. That's okay. But you broke a window. You stole a TV. That window, that TV is worth your life. We will shoot and kill you for that TV. So we switch back without consciously thinking about it, that the reason people are protesting is because a Black man died and that there's total impunity. The reason it got violent is because no one listens to the fact that people are saying we do not want total impunity. And what's going to upset the white community, the white police, is you broke property. You stole, you took a piece of property. Property is worth more than your life. And just let that sink through. Because even then, you know, the word looting is really highly charged. I don't know if you remember Hurricane Katrina.
I certainly do.
White people went into supermarkets to get food. Caption, people, you know, getting food. Black people going into supermarkets to get food. Black people looting. And you had a newspaper reporter which said, same hurricane, same supermarket. White people, Black people. These white people, they have a right to take something to keep eating to save their life. These people, your life is not worth that of property. Because in fact, you're only 3/5 of a human being and you're only property. And that is somewhere in the back, in the basement. So just think about how the word looting, generally after people have tried to demonstrate because they want justice, we forget about justice and they say, you have no right to take a piece of property because that property is worth more than your brown, black life.
Okay, if we stopped here.
Yes.
You know, I think one of the, to me, the core points of the work is until you can hold it without running away, nothing else is possible.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, a challenge to all of us individually, collectively. So I really appreciate you sharing your experience, and I'm going to be posting this on, you know, different sites, and I hope that you know, I'm going to invite you know, conversations about it, and so I hope you can be able to maybe respond to any questions that people might have. There might be too many. But
and what I would also like to do, I'm thinking in my mind, I've been thinking today, is maybe, you know, to call some webinars with people in the generative community and say, let's just think about, you know, how you say that this is trauma and that I have trouble feeling that, and what can we do to help people just feel it? And this whole thing about how can we reframe looting? But not just intellectually, but you know, the idea I had today is to say that we're going to do a generative coaching process on a collective problem. And I haven't gone further than that, and I'm sure that if I say let's wing it, that the community has enough resources to make it work. But because my feeling is that if this community, if people, you know, let's say you got 10 miles to go. If people here go 1 mile, all of the people that they're going to be coaching and in contact with will be able to jump that mile a whole lot faster because we've done the work. And it'll probably be much slower for us. But there's this thing that says once you start doing it and you figure out how to do it, it gets easier as you keep doing it.
yeah.
And I'll make a bet.
Yeah. I didn't mention to people, you know, I'm usually in Paris at least once a year, and usually every time I'm there, you and I have a dinner, and the dinners go 3, 4, 5 hours. And so I'm sure people get a feel that these conversations are really amazing to me. And we talk about a lot of different things, and really, you know, talking about one central dimension. But I appreciate you so much, Kathleen.
Thank you. And I appreciate you. And I want to thank you for having, when you got my letter, my email, hey, white folks, I need you guys to step up. You said, I'm stepping up, Kathleen.
Yeah. Well, this is one little thing, and it's obvious that we're all called to make this transformation on a whole lot of levels. Just, you know, let's say people in generative change, think of it selfishly first and foremost, because if you have to live in isolation and fear and delusion, how could you possibly be happy? You know, how could you possibly live like the sort of person you want to live? So, you know, we're getting lots of feedback, and I hope we take it. You know, it's sort of ironic that we started with the environmental crisis, you know, and we're getting this feedback from the environment, and now we're getting this sort of human species, you know, multicultural feedback. So
I'm going to give you. Do you know what COVID-16-19 is?
you told me last night.
We went from COVID-19 to COVID-16-19.
Yeah, and 1619 for the unaware.
It's in the United States, the beginning of slavery, 1619.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that really is, we're laughing, but it really is one of the deep spiritual viruses. You know, I always remember Martin Luther King talking about, on the American soul, there are three cancers that are growing: racism, poverty, and militarism. And, you know, it really started in all the way back in 1619, at least the American chapter of it.
Yeah. So,
thank you, sister.
Thank you.
And,
We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.